kebersamaan. Menghubungkan, menyatukan, mengikat keberagaman.
Here are some urban air mobility, UAM, and advanced air mobility, AAM, activities in Indonesia. Demo flight of IHang 216 in Bali on November 26, 2021. Indonesia Drone Expo, IDE, exhibition on August 10 to 11, 2023. Demo flight of Skyport in Batam in November 2023. Demo flight of IHang 216 in Budiarto on December 6, 2023. Demo flight drone sprayer for agricultural on December 13, 2023. Directorate General of Civil Aviation organized a socialization event and demonstration of local drones at Pertujuan, Bandung in October 2020, themed Fostering Collaboration among Indonesian Drone Technology Stakeholders, aimed to promoting the development of a safe, secure, and regulated drone ecosystem. On March 1, 2024, Autoflight eVTOL aircraft made history by completing the first intercity electric air taxi flight, autonomously covering 50 kilometers between Shenzhen and Zhuhai in 20 minutes.
"17,000 islands are spread across Indonesian territory, from Sabang to Merauke, from Miangas to Rote Island. Thousands of aircraft fly across the Indonesian sky each day. These unique geographical features have required Indonesia to make the development of air transport a top priority, in order to link a number of regions which are hard to reach by other modes of transportation. With 406 air routes connecting 251 airports throughout this country, DGCA Indonesia supports the National Economic Program, Indonesia-centric development, in connecting all the regions, including remote, outermost, inland, and border areas. DGCA Indonesia, with a number of achievements in the civil aviation sector, works to ensure the highest levels of safety, security, and convenience to aviation service consumers. Given regulatory function to oversee airport operators, air navigation providers, and airlines, DGCA Indonesia supervises and provides guidance to implementing operations including airspace use, aircrafts and airports, operation of air carrier and air navigation, enhancing aviation safety and security, reducing environmental impact, as well as aviation operations. Having implemented the Airbridge Subsidy program, DGCA Indonesia is now able to lower prices for hard-to-reach areas, which will likely increase the purchasing power of the citizen. The government is currently providing subsidies to passenger air carriers of pioneer routes, which has now proven to successfully decrease the price of 5 basic food needs. Complying with international civil aviation standards allows Indonesia to serve flights to all parts of the world, performing well against global competition. To achieve the image of an advanced Indonesia, for the sake of a bright future of the nation. Safe, secure, efficient, and convenient air transport. Directorate General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Transportation, Republic of Indonesia.
Indonesia adalah negara dengan kekayaan alam yang melimpah dan memiliki keberagaman suku dan budaya yang tersebar di ribuan pulau. Namun, tidak semua daerah bisa menikmati pembangunan yang merata, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Konektivitas menjadi masalah utama yang menghambat kemajuan suatu daerah. Sementara itu, mimpi dan harapan anak-anak generasi penerus bangsa di semua daerah adalah sama. Oleh karena itulah negara hadir, melalui Direktorat Jenderal Perhubungan Udara, melakukan pembangunan bandara-bandara baru, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Membangun konektivitas transportasi untuk memutus keterisolasian. Membangun jembatan udara dengan angkutan udara perintis kargo untuk mendukung penurunan disparitas harga barang kebutuhan pokok di daerah terpencil, tertinggal, dan daerah yang belum terlayani moda transportasi lain. Dengan dibangunnya bandara-bandara di daerah pinggiran dan terisolasi, menjadikan masyarakat dan anak-anak di sana berkesempatan untuk maju setara dengan daerah lainnya di Indonesia. Pembangunan konektivitas transportasi menjadikan bangsa Indonesia kuat dan bersatu dalam kebersamaan. Transportasi menjadi jembatan kebersamaan, menghubungkan, menyatukan, mengikat keberagaman.
Here are some urban air mobility, UAM, and advanced air mobility, AAM, activities in Indonesia. Demo flight of Aviation 216 in Bali on November 26, 2021. Indonesia Drone Expo, IDE, exhibition on August 10 to 11, 2023. Demo flight of Skyport in Batam in November 2023. Demo flight of IHang 216 in Budiarto on December 6, 2023. Demo flight drone sprayer for agricultural on December 13, 2023. Directorate General of Civil Aviation organized a socialization event and demonstration of local drones at Pertujijan, Bandung in October 2020, themed Fostering Collaboration among Indonesian drone technology stakeholders, aimed to promoting the development of a safe, secure, and regulated drone ecosystem. On March 1, 2024, Autoflight eVTOL aircraft made history by completing the first intercity electric air taxi flight, autonomously covering 50 kilometers between Shenzhen and Zhuhai in 20 minutes.
"17,000 islands are spread across Indonesian territory.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now inviting you to enter to the Pechatu Hall 3 and 5 as we are about to start. We cordially invite you to please have a seat and make yourself comfortable. As courtesy, we would like to kindly request that all mobile communication devices be switched to silent mode during the forum event. Thank you for your kind operation. Ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to invite you to enter the Pechatu Hall 3 and 5 as we are about to start. We cordially invite you to please have a seat and make yourself comfortable. As courtesy, we would like to kindly request that all mobile communication devices be switched to silent mode during the forum event. Thank you for your kind operation. Good morning and welcome to Minister of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Budi Karya Sumadi. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated because our event will begin shortly. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, please kindly direct your attention for a safety briefing video.
Welcome to Bali Nusa Dua Convention Center, BNDCC. Your safety is always our first priority. It is essential that you are familiar with our emergency procedures in order to respond appropriately during an emergency. When you enter the building, pay attention to the nearest exit doors, emergency stairs and fire extinguishers. Please take a few moments now to locate your nearest exit. In the event of an emergency such as fire, earthquake, bomb explosion, or tsunami is announced over the public address system, or an emergency alarm is sounded, please remain calm and listen to the announcement. Please follow the evacuation routes and follow the instructions given by Emergency Response Team (ERT) personnel. If we are required to evacuate the building, please proceed calmly to the nearest safe exit and follow closely the instructions of ERT personnel to the assembly points. Please do not use the elevator. Use the nearest emergency stairs according to the evacuation route signs. If you require first aid, please do not hesitate to ask one of our ERT personnel. Now you are here at Pechatu Hall. Pay attention to the exit doors and evacuation routes. Thank you for your attention. Best wishes for an eventful day at BNDCC.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the Indonesia National Anthem, Indonesia Raya. Please be seated. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Bali Nusa Dua Convention Center for Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024. entitled Scaling Up Sustainable Aviation Fuel and Integrated Airspace Solution for a Greener Future. And allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nana Fiana, your Master of Ceremony for today's forum. First and foremost, allow me to extend a greeting to our honorable guest who has joined us today. Minister of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Budi Karya Sumadi. Good morning. Minister of Transport and Communication, Democratic of the Republic of Timor-Leste, His Excellency Miguel Marque Gonçalves. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Secretary General of the Ministry of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Novi Rianto. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Director General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, Mrs. Maria Christi Endah Murni. Honorable Ministers and distinguished representatives of Asia Pacific countries, esteemed moderators and speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024 aims to be a key platform for promoting sustainable aviation fuels, or SAF, accelerating their adoption within the aviation industry. As highlighted at the 41st session of the ICAO Assembly and the Third Conference on Aviation and Alternative Fuels, or CAF3. SAF represents the most significant potential for reducing CO2 emission for international aviation. Moreover, the forum will discuss the essential roles played by drone and advanced air mobility, or AAM, in molding the trajectory of sustainable aviation solution, underscoring their critical importance in bolstering transportation, efficiency, and environmental sustainability. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's start today's forum with Balinese culture and dance. Please welcome on stage, Janger Dance. Please give a round of applause to Janger Dance. Ladies and gentlemen, Janger Dance explained about concept of Trihita Karana, which means harmony relationship between human, gods, and nature. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to initiate today's agenda, let us listen. The opening remarks will be delivered by the Minister of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Budi Karya Sumadi.
Good morning, Excellency, Minister, Transport and Communication, Democratic Republic of Timor Leste, Excellency Mr. Miguel Marquez, Vice Minister of Public Works and Transport of Lao Republic, Mr. Tayong Ham Manoham, Ambassador, and ladies and gentlemen. In the name of the God of Almighty, my peace be upon us all, creating prosperity, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, greeting of virtue. This morning, I give a welcome to the Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024 in Bali. On behalf of the government of Republic of Indonesia, I am honored of launch of this side event of the Bali International Air Show. This year, theme is Scale Up Sustainable Aviation Fuel and Integrated Airspace Solution for a Greener Future. Emphasize its urgency to importance of advancing sustainable fuel and innovation solution. Ladies and gentlemen, Asia Pacific region holds immense potential in shaping the future of aviation. Indonesia is committed to being a key player in this transformation. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and recent global assembly highlight the vital role of sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, a lower carbon aviation, LCAF, indigenous CO2, emission and achieving climate goal. With its abundant SRF, feedstock, and developing technologies, the Asia Pacific region is crucial. The global SRF supply and its implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, today I will explore strategies for advancing SRF development, improving financial access, and strengthening partnerships and promote SAP in aviation green solution. Furthermore, advanced aircraft system, UAS, and advanced air mobility offer a new opportunity in airspace management, reduction congestion, enhancing logistics, and cutting emission. These innovations are essential for sustainable aviation future. As we integrate conventional aircraft with UAS and AAM system, we must consider implementation and airspace management, public trust, and safety. This forum aims to ignite dialogue and inspire action from the boosting SAP production and finances and envisioning the future of the integrated airspace. Your participation, expertise, and collaboration are crucial for the achieving greener, more sustainable aviation sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I extend my deepest gratitude to the coordinating Minister for Maritime and Investment Affairs for support and our distinguished speaker for their contribution. I also wish to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Excellency Minister, esteemed authorities, and participants. Your engagement is essential in advancing the rapid progress that our industry urgently needs. I wish you a productive and insightful discussion. Thank you very much. May peace, good mercy, and blessing be upon us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your remarks. Please remain on stage for the next agenda. It's photo session. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite to come up the stage the Minister of Transportation and Communication of Democratic Republic of Timor-Leste, His Excellency Miguel Marque Gonçalves, Secretary General of the Ministry of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Novi Rianto. Please come to the stage, Director General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, Mrs. Maria Kristi Enda Murni. CEO of PT Pertamina Patraniaga, Bapak Rifa Siahaan. And also representative of Asia Pacific countries, Australia, Brunei, Laos PDR, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Uni Emirat Arab, Vietnam, and Mr. Sarin Kunakor from Cambodia. Once again, we would like to invite you, representative of Asia Pacific countries, representative of Australia, Brunei, Laos PDR, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Uni Emirat Arab, Vietnam, and from Cambodia, Mr. Sarin Kunakor. On my count, in 3, 2, 1. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Please remain on stage. Now we would like to invite all of speakers and moderators to join on stage. Okay. On my count in 3, 2, 1. One more time in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, now you may return to your seat. Thank you so much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the next agenda. Due to prior commitment, Mr. Salazar is unable to be present at this gathering. Nevertheless, Mr. Salazar has truthfully prepared special remark for our consideration. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary General of ICAO, Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar.
Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and friends in aviation, it is my great pleasure to address you on this occasion at the Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024. Your focus on scaling up sustainable aviation fuels and integrated aerospace solutions for a greener future comes at a pivotal moment in our civil aviation sector's history. I only regret that I could not join you today in beautiful Bali. The International Civil Aviation Organization has many priorities and initiatives in support of your objectives, but I would like to offer you our top 3 aspirations for your discussion. First, we must accelerate the production and deployment of sustainable aviation fuels. ICAO's report on the long-term global aspirational goal of net zero emissions by 2050 clearly identifies fuels as the most significant contributor to the decarbonization of aviation. This inspired the 3rd ICAO Conference on Aviation and Alternative Fuels to adopt a global framework for dramatically accelerating the production, in particular by heightening confidence for regulators and financing partners, and move forward with new projects of SAF. We can achieve aviation ambitious environmental goals, provided that we act now and that we act together. Second, we must embrace innovation in aerospace management. Beyond efficiency, integrated aerospace solutions are about imagining the very way we conceptualize air traffic. from accommodating new entrants like unmanned aircraft systems to optimizing routes for fuel efficiency, the skies of tomorrow demand our ingenuity today. In this regard, ICAO recently concluded the 14th Air Navigation Conference with the theme, Performance Improvement Driving Sustainability, and the first Advanced Air Mobility Symposium with the theme, Advanced Air Mobility, Global Harmonization and Interoperability, the challenges and the opportunities it presents. Third, we must ensure that no country is left behind in this green transition. Our ICAO Assistance, Capacity and Training for Sustainable Aviation Fuels, the ACSAF program, and the FinVest Hub initiative to accelerate access to finance for these type of projects for developing states and states with special needs are designed to enable all states to develop their SAF potential. We aim to complete SAF feasibility studies for 20 states in 2025 and 50 states by 2028. This is about fostering a global ecosystem of sustainable aviation. And so in this regard, ICAO will hold next month the 2024 LTAC stock-taking event on aviation CO2 emissions reductions, and I look forward to see you for very constructive conversations. As you are convening in Bali, I am reminded of the Indonesian concept of gotong royong, the spirit of communal work and cooperation. This philosophy perfectly encapsulates what we need in global aviation. Well, you all certainly have your own sovereign and commercial interests. We are a global community with wide-ranging shared goals that require our collective effort to achieve. As we celebrate Indonesia's 79th year of independence and we approach the 80th anniversary of the Chicago Convention, we are further reminded of the enduring spirit of cooperation that has always been essential to aviation's safe and sustainable development. Indonesia's active participation in ICAO since the earliest days of its independence exemplifies its long-standing commitment to the international air transport community. I congratulate Minister Budi Karya Sumadi, Minister of Transport, and Minister Luhut Binsar Padjayatan, Coordinator Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment, and indeed all Indonesians for placing these principles at the heart of their vision for Indonesia's future, as reflected in hosting this event. The theme of Indonesia's recent Independence Day celebration, Nusantara Baru Indonesia Maju, and also speaks of the new horizons and progress. Similarly, in aviation, we are building our own Nusantara, a new realm of sustainable, efficient, and inclusive air transport system. On that note, I wish you fruitful deliberations today, and my ICAO colleagues and I are certainly looking forward to hearing about the outcomes of this important event. Thank you very much.
That was the second opening remarks delivered by the Secretary General of ICAO, Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a coffee break at foyer area for about 15 minutes before we continue to the next agenda. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to invite you to enjoy the coffee break at foyer area for 15 minutes before we continue our next agenda for today. Thank you. Hadirin undangan yang berbahagia, kami persilakan untuk dapat menikmati hidangan coffee break yang ada di area foyer selama 15 menit dan kami mohon untuk dapat kembali ke ruangan karena kita akan melanjutkan agenda hari ini. Terima kasih.
17,000 islands are spread across Indonesian territory, from Sabang to Merauke, from Miangas to Rote Island. Thousands of aircraft fly across the Indonesian sky each day. These unique geographical features have required Indonesia to make the development of air transport a top priority in order to link a number of regions which are hard to reach by other modes of transportation. With 406 air routes connecting 251 airports throughout this country, DGCA Indonesia supports the National Economic Program, Indonesia-centric development, in connecting all the regions, including remote, outermost, inland, and border areas. DGCA Indonesia, with a number of achievements in the civil aviation sector, works to ensure the highest levels of safety, security, and convenience to aviation service consumers. Given regulatory function to oversee airport operators, air navigation providers, and airlines, DGCA Indonesia supervises and provides guidance to implementing operations including airspace use, aircrafts and airports, operation of air carrier and air navigation, enhancing aviation safety and security, reducing environmental impact, as well as aviation operations. Having implemented the Airbridge Subsidy program, DGCA Indonesia is now able to lower prices for hard-to-reach areas, which will likely increase the purchasing power of the citizen. The government is currently providing subsidies to passenger air carriers of pioneer routes, which has now proven to successfully decrease the price of 5 basic food needs. Complying with international civil aviation standards allows Indonesia to serve flights to all parts of the world, performing well against global competition. To achieve the image of an advanced Indonesia, for the sake of a bright future of the nation. Safe, secure, efficient, and convenient air transport. Directorate General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Transportation, Republic of Indonesia.
Indonesia adalah negara dengan kekayaan alam yang melimpah dan memiliki keberagaman suku dan budaya yang tersebar di ribuan pulau. Namun, tidak semua daerah bisa menikmati pembangunan yang merata, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Konektivitas menjadi masalah utama yang menghambat kemajuan suatu daerah. Sementara itu, mimpi dan harapan anak-anak generasi penerus bangsa di semua daerah adalah sama. Oleh karena itulah negara hadir, melalui Direktorat Jenderal Perhubungan Udara, melakukan pembangunan bandara-bandara baru, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Membangun konektivitas transportasi untuk memutus keterisolasian. Membangun jembatan udara dengan angkutan udara perintis kargo untuk mendukung penurunan disparitas harga barang kebutuhan pokok di daerah terpencil, tertinggal, dan daerah yang belum terlayani moda transportasi lain. Dengan dibangunnya bandara-bandara di daerah pinggiran dan terisolasi, menjadikan masyarakat dan anak-anak di sana berkesempatan untuk maju setara dengan daerah lainnya di Indonesia.
Mic one, check 1 2 check 1 2 hey ha hey say 1 2 check hey say ha hey check.
Bangsa Indonesia kuat dan bersatu dalam kebersamaan. Transportasi menjadi jembatan kebersamaan, menghubungkan, menyatukan, mengikat keberagaman.
the ballroom because we will continue our next agenda for today. Thank you so much.
By completing the first intercity electric air taxi flight, autonomously covering 50 kilometers between Shenzhen and Zhuhai in 20 minutes.
"17,000 islands are spread across Indonesian territory, from Sabang to Merauke, from Miangas to Rote Island. Thousands of aircraft fly across the Indonesian sky each day. These unique geographical features have required Indonesia to make the development of air transport a top priority in order to link a number of regions which are hard to reach by other modes of transportation. With 406 air routes connecting 251 airports throughout this country, DGCA Indonesia supports the National Economic Program, Indonesia-centric development, in connecting all the regions, including remote, outermost, inland, and border areas. DGCA Indonesia, with a number of achievements in the civil aviation sector, works to ensure the highest levels of safety, security, and convenience to aviation service consumers. Given regulatory function to oversee airport operators, air navigation providers, and airlines, DGCA Indonesia supervises and provides guidance to implementing operations including airspace use, aircrafts and airports, operation of air carrier and air navigation, enhancing aviation safety and security, reducing environmental impact, as well as aviation operations.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please proceed to the ballroom because we will continue our agenda for today. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please proceed to the ballroom because we will continue our next agenda for today. Thank you.
The government is currently providing subsidies to passenger air carriers of pioneer routes, which has now proven to successfully decrease the price of 5 basic food needs. Complying with international civil aviation standards allows Indonesia to serve flights to all parts of the world, performing well against global competition. To achieve the image of an advanced Indonesia, for the sake of a bright future of the nation. Safe, secure, efficient, and convenient air transport. Directorate General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Transportation, Republic of Indonesia.
Indonesia adalah negara dengan kekayaan alam yang melimpah dan memiliki keberagaman suku dan budaya yang tersebar di ribuan pulau. Namun, Tidak semua daerah bisa menikmati pembangunan yang merata, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Konektivitas menjadi masalah utama yang menghambat kemajuan suatu daerah. Sementara itu, mimpi dan harapan anak-anak generasi penerus bangsa di semua daerah adalah sama. Oleh karena itulah negara hadir, melalui Direktorat Jenderal Perhubungan Udara, melakukan pembangunan bandara-bandara baru, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Membangun konektivitas transportasi untuk memutus keterisolasian. Membangun jembatan udara dengan angkutan udara perintis kargo untuk mendukung penurunan disparitas harga barang kebutuhan pokok di daerah terpencil, tertinggal, dan daerah yang belum terlayani moda transportasi lain. Dengan dibangunnya bandara-bandara di daerah pinggiran dan terisolasi, menjadikan masyarakat dan anak-anak di sana berkesempatan untuk maju setara dengan daerah lainnya di Indonesia. Pembangunan konektivitas transportasi menjadikan bangsa Indonesia kuat dan bersatu dalam kebersamaan. Transportasi menjadi jembatan kebersamaan, menghubungkan, menyatukan, mengikat keberagaman.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue our next agenda for today. So please proceed to the ballroom. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please proceed to the ballroom because we will continue our next agenda shortly. Thank you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please enter the ballroom and please be seated. We will continue our next agenda. Thank you. Hadirin undangan yang berbahagia, kami mohon untuk dapat segera duduk karena kita masih akan melanjutkan acara kita pada hari ini. Sekali lagi dengan hormat kami mohon untuk dapat segera duduk karena agenda akan segera dilanjutkan. Terima kasih. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, with all of my respect, I would like to invite you to come to the ballroom, to proceed to the ballroom, because we will continue our Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024. And please be seated. Thank you. Sekali lagi dengan hormat kepada seluruh peserta, kami mohon untuk dapat segera duduk karena kita masih akan melanjutkan agenda kita hari ini. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, let us carry on to the next agenda. We will have a special session with our special speaker coming from the CEO of PT Pertamina Patraniaga. Without further ado, please welcome Bapak Rifa Siahaan.
Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our minister is not here, but of course, we would like to thank the Honorable Minister of Transportation, Bapak Budi Karya Sumadi, and of course, the Secretary General of MOT Indonesia, Pak Novi Rianto, Director General of Civil Aviation, Ibu Maria, who's probably still outside, and honorable ministers and distinguished representative of Asia Pacific countries, esteemed moderators and speakers, and all distinguished honorable guests. Well, first of all, allow me to extend our gratitude from Pertamina for the opportunity given to us to be here to participate in this great event, Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024. As we know, Indonesia is an archipelagic country. We consist of 17,000 islands, where 8,000 of those islands are inhabited islands. Speaking of this, it shows the importance of transportations, especially air transport or aviation sectors. And aviation sectors is expected to be able to ensure the connectivity inter-islands of these islands. And to support that, Indonesia has strategic presence and locations which mandated to Pertamina to manage the complexity and the challenge in operations, because we have 72 aviation fuel terminals spreading across the country from the western side to the east side. And these aviation fuel terminals is supported and supplied by 5 refineries that we have, managed by one of the subholding of Pertamina, the Refining and Petrochemical Subholdings. And of course, on the other side, which is also very grateful for us, Indonesia is endowed with the abundance of natural resources. And this, of course, can be utilized to drive and to push the sustainability strategy, including the sustainability strategy for aviation. We are talking about sustainable aviation fuel. So where Pertamina in this scenario? Pertamina, as the national energy company, we long recognize the importance of decarbonization in this aviation sector. Through our research and development department, we tried to research and develop a lot of products related to this sustainable strategy. Globally, the aviation itself contributes 2 to 3% of the CO2 emissions. And by the growing of the number of global air passengers, the importance, the strategic importance of developing the decarbonization strategy and sustainability strategy for aviation sector is very important and critical. In terms of decarbonization and reducing the emissions, Pertamina has already started back in 2010, where we received mandates from our government to distribute and to implement the B35 now Back then, it started with B5. It's a strategy to reduce the emission through the biofuel, biodiesel. And nowadays, the early focus in developing the extension of the product, the HVO, the hydrotreated vegetable oils, it shows the remarkable steps from Pertamina in terms of reducing the emissions in diesel engines. Speaking of that, this HVO is laid as the groundwork, as the baseline for us, for Pertamina, in developing the sustainable aviation fuel, which becoming our innovation and strategy to help and then to support our government's goal to have 2060 net zero emissions. And this is also important milestone. In 2021, we have successfully tested the BioJet A1, our SAF, to the military aircraft. And then this is very important milestone because it gives a lot of feedback and then gives a lot of informations for us to develop in more high quality and then better specification in SAF. And by 2023, this effort extended to the commercial aircraft, where we successfully tested SAF on a broader scale. And in this series of events in Bali, started right now, we proudly announce that in this event this week, we would like to announce the trial sales of SAF during the Bali International Air Show 2024. And Pertamina, through Pertamina Patraniaga, the subholding commercial and trading, becoming the first in Asia, in Southeast Asia, as the company who's able to sell and to commercialize the sustainable aviation fuel and certified by Corsia and RED2. And our diversified feedstock is very critical to increase the scalability of SAF produced by Pertamina. We have explored multiple feedstock, from the edible stuff, RBDPKO, the refined bleach, deodorized palm kernel oil, and non-edible oils from the plants like malapari. And of course, the most important thing is from waste base, including the used cooking oil. Moreover, the strategic development of Pertamina refineries located in Cilacap and Dumai, these are the key in achieving the economic of scale in SAF production. And by investing in next generation refinery strategies and technologies and supported by reliable domestic UCO waste-based feedstock, Pertamina is on a positive track in increasing the number of volume production for SAF. So to conclude, the future of aviation industry is really depends on this collaboration, like the Secretary General of ICAO said that gotong royong, this is very important, and innovation, and of course, sharing the commitment of this sustainability strategy. And our SAF initiatives is not only a milestone, but it shows our commitment of Pertamina to energize your journey towards more efficient and environmentally responsible aviation. Pertamina stands ready, and then we are always ready to provide greener energy solutions and becoming the partner of decarbonization in aviation industry. Thank you very much again from us to all of you, And then hopefully this series of events in Bali can give positive impact and greener, better aviation industry. Again, good morning. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Rifa. And please remain on stage because we will present you a token of appreciation as a representative of PT Pertamina Persero. We would like to express our gratitude for the opportunity to support the organization of this event. And for that, I would like to invite Secretary Directorate of Civil Aviation, Bapak Lukman F. Laisa, to come to the stage to present the token of appreciation to Bapak Rifa. Thank you so much. Once again in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. And now you may return to your seat. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to begin our first forum session with the topic of simulating supply and demand of Sustainable Aviation Fuel, or SAF, and financing SAF project. And without further ado, please welcome our first moderator, Deputy Director of Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, Bapak Arvinandi Ferialdi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, distinguished guests, ambassadors, ministers. I'd like to welcome you again to the Asia Pacific Air Transport Forum 2024 here in Bali. Hope everyone had a safe flight, pleasant flight, and hope in the future we'll be using more sustainable aviation fuel for our flights and business travels. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Arvinandi Ferialdi. I am with the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, and I have the privilege of moderating our first session today on the topic of stimulating supply and demand for SAF and financing SAF projects. Today's session will focus on the key elements of SAF development, including demand generation, supply scaling, and project financing. We're here from key stakeholders across SAF ecosystem as they share insights and policy frameworks to drive demand, perspective on SAF advancement, strategies to scale up supply, feedstock, and technological innovations. And as well, last but not least, the financial mechanism that would support our SAF projects. Through the discussion, we aim to achieve a comprehensive understanding of how to simulate demand, expand supply, and unlock financing for SAF projects. Now, without further ado, I would like to call one of all the speakers to the audience. I believe we have a very strong set of speakers representing different parts of the industry and also geography to ensure that we have a very comprehensive insight on how we can scale up SAF in the region, especially in Indonesia. First of all, I would like to call Mr. Santiago Hayaliva to the stage. Just a quick for introduction, for those who have not known her, Mr. Santi is the International Cooperation Officer at the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. For him, the Southeast Asia region is already very familiar to him. He played a key role on the EU-Asian Sustainable Connectivity Package on the Aviation Priority project, as well as that, as part of the EASA, he is one of the driving force on the implementation of the Refuel EU project in the EU Union. Next, I would like to call Mr. Kevin Lee to come up to the stage. Yes. So Mr. Kevin Lee here is the Assistant Director of External Affairs and Sustainability of IATA Asia Pacific. In his role, Kelvin oversees IATA's engagement with external stakeholders across both public and private sectors, while also advancing the sustainability agenda throughout the APAC region. Next, I would like to also call Mr. Taufik Aditya Warman to the stage. Pak Taufik is the President Director of Kilang Pertamina International, which is the subholding for the downstream and refinery of Pertamina. Over his 30 years experience in the energy sector by Pertamina, Pak Taufik has been instrumental in driving the innovation and growth in Kilang Pertamina. And I would also like to add, Kilang Pertamina is one of the only SAF producer now in Indonesia, which they have successfully conducted trial flight last October with 2.4% co-processing J24 ya Pak. He will talk more later in terms of what are the Pertamina's strategic plan for the SAF refinery in Indonesia. Next, I would also like to welcome Mr. Scott Turn to the stage. Mr. Scott Turn is the FFA Asset Center of Excellence. He's a researcher with over 20 years experience in development of biomass resources and their energy application. Recently, he is part of a core member of the FFA Asset Center of Excellence, which aims to proliferate the development of SAF throughout the world, sponsored by the Federal Aviation Authority of the US. For Mr. Scott, the Asia Pacific region is also something that is unfamiliar for him. He has been here multiple times, including recently to the FAA workshop in Bali. We had the privilege to hear his thoughts on the biomass development potential for Indonesia. Now, last but not least, I would like to welcome Mr. Eric Ruiz Araya to the stage. Now, I would like to add that Mr. Eric, I would say, complete the piece of the puzzle for the speaker here. If we have here people represented from the industry, from regulators, from researcher, Eric here represents from the financing aspect, which I believe in any renewable energy project, financing is one of the, if I may opportunities that we need to address together in order to have scale up our renewable energy projects. Parik here is from IRENA. He's a Deputy Director for Project Facilitation and Support. So we'll be looking forward to hear from him, from his experience on financing other renewable projects and how we could apply to SAF. Now, without further ado, I would like to start the session since all the speakers are up the stage. Just to open the session, and to remind ourselves, the aviation industry commitment to net zero emissions, along with ICAO's long-term aspirational goals, and also IATA's Fly Net Zero 2050 initiative, will be primarily driven by SAF, but also complemented by advancement in aviation technology, operational and infrastructure optimization, carbon offset, and carbon capture initiatives. As the primary driver of aviation decarbonization, deployment of sustainable aviation fuel must accelerate significantly, especially with second phase of ICAO's CORSIA initiative set to take effect by 2027. However, given the SAF industry is still in its early stages, the sector faces substantial challenges and uncertainties on both demand and supply sides. This includes issues related to scaling production, feedstock availability, technological pathways advancement, cost competitiveness. Addressing these hurdles will be critical to ensuring SAF's successful integration into the global aviation ecosystem and to meet our larger aviation decarbonization target. In terms of the session, there are 3 parts of the session that we'll explore. First of all, we'll begin our discussion by exploring the demand side of SAF, starting with a case study from the EU policy framework presented by Mr. Santi, followed by insights from IATA on the airline adoption of SAF by Mr. Kevin Lee. And then secondly, we'll then shift our focus on the supply side, highlighting key strategies from leading SAF producers and expanding investment in SAF feedstock and technology from Pat Taufik and Mr. Scott Turn. Finally, to bring everything together, we'll delve into the potential financing mechanisms and tools necessary to scale up SAF production. Each of our panelists will be addressed subsequent questions related to their field and the theme of the session. To begin, I would like to turn to Mr. Santi to share the insights on the European Union SAF policy architecture and multi-stakeholder preparation to ensure SAF mandate readiness by 2025. Mr. Santi, I give it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizers of the event. So it's a great pleasure and great honor for the European Union Aviation Safety Agency to participate. So I prepared some slides. I try not to use those slides as a presentation, but just highlighting several points out of them. I was indeed using almost very same slides in a previous event this week. And it's to reflect the need of policies in order to create a market for SAF. I think we agree, and this is different views that you have from the governments in the long-term aspirational goal from ICAO, from the industry on the right-hand side, from ATAC, and then from the economic actors from the World Economic Forum. What they are saying, and no need to go into the details of the graph, basically is in order to decarbonize the aviation sector, sustainable aviation fuels are essential. And essential because of the deployment of new technology will come later on. And of course, it requires safety standards. It requires a safe deployment of this new technology. It requires transformation of the infrastructure of the whole system. And therefore, yes, it will come with more disruptive technologies, but in the mid to long term, sustainable aviation fuels are the basic tool. It also says that sustainable aviation fuels have multiple pathways, and therefore is not a single pathway what is being chased or pursued by the different actors. And it's essential to investigate and to develop these other pathways that will complement and will ensure that we can achieve the long-term aspirational goal or net zero by 2050. It also says that it's challenging, and I will mention that in the next slide. What you have here, and again, no need to go in the details of the graph, on the left-hand side, what you see is the estimation of production. And basically, what it shows is that there is, let's say, an issue of availability of SAF. There are new projects being announced, there are new production being online, but still we are below of the target, we are below from what we will need in order to achieve net zero by 2050 or 5% by 2030. On the right-hand side, what you have is an estimation, here the variability is quite high, of the price of first Jet A1 at the bottom, and then the different pathways in the different decades ahead. As you see, the price will reduce along the different years. So when technology develops and gains maturity, once the deployment of new pathways will be enabled, and also once basically the logistics and all the infrastructure is well deployed. However, what it shows as well is the price will always be higher from Jet A1. Indeed, this is industry's view, is, okay, you are asking to, for good reasons, for good environmental reasons, to start using SAF. However, the price is higher. What is the point of buying? I mean, there is no commercial interest for me to buy SAF as an operator. On the producer side, and here Pertamina obviously will also confirm this, it's more expensive to produce sustainable aviation fuels. So from the producer side, the question is, why should I produce something that barely will be difficult for my operators to buy? This is where policies are to play a role to create the market. And there are different approaches, and I think we will see the different approaches where you have the different examples from the US, more on incentive, the European Union with mandate, but also some sort of incentives along. But there is a need for policies to create such a market. I think it's important also to reflect on the tools that are necessary for a government to start developing SAF. And basically, the challenges are many, starting by identifying feedstock, the technology, high investment for new production facilities, the maturity of certain technology. However, this is a call for an orchestrated approach, an orchestrated action from governments. There on the slide, you have certain ideas on what is the role of the different, or what are the elements that might facilitate implementation, the deployment of SAF. But basically, I highlight SAF policies and regulations in order to create the market and in order to facilitate the deployment of sustainable aviation fuel, either on supply, on production, on demand. These will need to or require a set of regulations, a set of policies that facilitate that. This is, I think also to put in context, is not only decarbonizing aviation. And I think this is something that we mentioned before. I heard the comment on achieving a 2060 in the case of Indonesia, 2050 for some other states like the European Union, arriving to a net zero economy. And this is where the policy context has to fit basically the ambitions of the different governments. Aviation is one of the sectors that will need and will require to decarbonize. That's why also it requires a combination or an orchestrated action by the governments to identify what are the best decarbonization pathways for the different sectors. In the case of the European Union, we have the commitment for the Fit for 55, which is achieving 55 reduction of emissions by 2030 in all our economy. And therefore, there is a set of actions. Aviation, the RefuelEU. The RefuelEU regulation is one of the regulatory actions fitting this regulatory package. So we have this ambition. The ambition is beyond aviation, and it fits into the bigger picture of our commitments. I think I will skip some of them. I think it's quite important for governments looking at the development of new policies, and especially looking at SAF, to set clear goals for the regulation. I think this is obviously the main goal is to achieve more sustainable aviation, meaning reducing emissions. However, your policy context plays a significant role. In the case of the European Union, we are 27 states, plus 4 states under the EASA framework. And we need also to ensure that we establish or we maintain a level playing field for all actors. That's why in the deliberations of the definition of the policy, this is one of the main objectives in addition to ensure the reduction of emissions through the ramp up or the scale up of sustainable aviation fuels. This means that we cannot develop a regulation that may favor certain actors, meaning, for example, certain states that may have a better established industry, or that it's bringing either our operators or operators from other jurisdictions to a different or to a lower or a different level play field, basically that are competing not in the same conditions. So that's why in the European context, we arrived to the mandates as the option for the RefuelEU. So how do we regulate sustainable aviation fuels? So one is the ramp up of sustainable aviation fuel production and supply, and second, ensuring level play field for all the actors. I will not go in detail on the regulation itself. I think it's to highlight the mandate is on the fuel suppliers at the airports in the European Union. This is to ensure that they provide a minimum blend of sustainable aviation fuel as of next year, with increasing targets or increasing mandates of blend for the coming years. And that is something that the operators will uplift as soon as they land in the European Union airports. There are certain limitations in terms of which airports and which operators and so on. You have all that information in the Refuel EU regulation. What is also very important is to reflect on what is the level play field factor. In this case, the tankering practice is limited to 90% or to 10% of the fuel trip. And this is, again, to ensure that we are all operators landing and taking off from the European Union airports are playing in the same conditions, with the same rule, and being affected by the same pressure from the regulatory action. I think it's also important to reflect on the reporting mechanism. So you have there the mandates. As I mentioned before, there are several pathways to produce sustainable aviation fuels. The regulator in this case, or the policymaker in this case, wants to ensure that we are looking at several pathways. And the way that we have decided in the European Union is to establish a sub-mandate for the most promising pathway, which is the so-called electric fuels or e-fuels, but which is the most challenging one from the technology perspective and also from basically the production and the technology that is available as of today. That's why the regulator has put in place also a sub-mandate for e-fuels being delivered into the European Union airports. This is obviously what we intend to do. This is being supported while the regulation is being developed. There is the so-called impact assessment that is carried out to estimate out of the different policy options, which is the one that, while achieving the impact or achieving the intended objectives, the intended goals of the regulation, assess what is the impact in the different aspects, obviously environment, but also social, economic impacts of the piece of regulation. This is the basis for establishing the monitoring of the regulation. And this is a very important aspect of the RefuelEU or any other European regulation. What you have here, I cannot need to go in detail. On the left-hand side, you have a very recently published report from the US. This is the production capacity and the estimated capacity for this year. You see there has been an impact, a growing percentage or growing volumes of sustainable aviation fuel along the years. This is certainly the consequence of their regulatory package. In the case, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Grand Challenge, there is clear impact, clear positive impact by having a policy and establishing or realizing greater production capabilities. On the right-hand side, you have the European Union picture. In bluish, you have the capacity that is announced or planned. This is obviously to be taken with care because not all projects that are being announced materializes. And this is, we are looking at 50% success rate as the factor or as the reference to identify when a project will start delivering or the final production that will be put on the online. Just to say, there is kind of an asterisk in green. This is the announced production. You see in gray, on the bottom part, the mandates. So as you can see, the production is not enough in the European Union as of today. The announced capacity will be, but there is not yet online the production that is necessary to fulfill the mandate. And this is also a factor that is attracting other markets, other producers into the European Union market. There is a lot of production being supplied into the European Union because of the consequence of the policy in the European Union. So policies are a fundamental factor not only to enable the market or to enable the production locally, but also to attract the supply from other regions. Finally, I will not go much more in detail, but as I mentioned, there is a fundamental element in all the European regulations, which is the monitoring. The monitoring of the regulation when it's being deployed. There is an estimation of the impact. There is, let's say, certain objectives that the regulation intends to fulfill. So there is a need of analyzing if the regulation is meeting the intended objectives and if the impact that has been foreseen during the impact assessment phase is, let's say, within the margins or within the ranges that were identified. For that, in the case of the refuel EU, we have put reporting obligations on the operators, so they will have to report the fuel uplift in the European Union airports, and additional information I will explain later. For the fuel suppliers, the same, what is the amount of sustainable aviation fuels and the normal Jet A1 that is being supplied in the European Union airports, and also for the airport and airport managers to complete the picture. This is, let's say, in a wider scale and is being submitted into databases that are already existing for the monitoring of energy. So I think this, just the point obviously is not to go in detail, is the point of the need of establishing a monitoring system that gives you the, let's say, the feedback loop and also gives you the opportunity to modify the regulation or to go for additional actions to ensure that the piece of regulation or basically that the country is achieving the objectives that the regulation was intended. So I think that touches the 3 points. So the importance of policies to enable production, also, let's say, the need of sustainable aviation fuels, and finally, the need of establishing this reporting or these feedback loops in order to take action.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Santi, for providing that rather short yet comprehensive explanation of the EU's perspective and also policy framework to not only scale up SAF demand, but also supply. A couple of things that I took notes here, right? Of course, I think given the context of the economics behind SAF, but also the importance of using SAF to decarbonize air transport policy, but not just any policy, but policy that provides reliable, long-term, and same level playing field, right, is very necessary. And if I reflect in terms of the context for Indonesia, right, as you might know that tomorrow we'll be launching our roadmap for SAF in inshallah. Couple of things that come to mind which I want to ask your thoughts, right? First of all, Indonesia is also part of a larger economic bloc, ASEAN, right? And if you've been following the news recently, more and more ASEAN countries have announced their own mandates to similar demands. Indonesia, probably you've learned, will be launching about 1% by 2027. Singapore, correct me if I'm wrong, 1% in 2026. Malaysia, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, informed that they will be launching about 2% by 2027, right? Now, but of course, we are kind of like in the same economic bloc of ASEAN, right? From your perspective, from EU, right? in your experience on putting together all these different stakeholders to agree on a mandate, what's your thoughts on the differing mandates in the region in Indonesia and how that would affect the scaling up the demand, because there are different like playing fields, if I may, in the region here in Southeast Asia?
Well, at first, I think you cannot take what is being developed in a region like the European Union in like a reference for other regions. I think we have very specific setup with, we have delegated sovereignty over institutions that take care of the European Union. So we are under 27 or certain institutions that are taking power from the 27 member states. We have a single aviation market that is much more developed than the single aviation market in ASEAN for aviation. That also plays a role. And I think certain factors need to be reflected. How the different mandates or the different policies will affect the level playing field in the region. And that is something that I'm sure in the context of the air transport working groups, there will be certain discussions around it. And it's a factor that the policymakers need to consider. Are you going to be more competitive or are you going to be less competitive? And what is the, let's say, the level play field that you want to establish in your region?
Thank you. So I think also that's all could be an insight as well for us in Indonesia, and how we could also, if I may, work together with our neighbors to scale up in a more level playing field for the SAF mandate demand. Yeah. Thank you very much, Santi. I think we will also have later time for the audience to ask questions. But now I'd like to direct our attention to Mr. Kelvin from IATA, who will present IATA's perspective, especially from the industry, airlines, on the SAF industry development in the region. Mr. Kelvin, I give you the stage.
Right, thank you very much. First and foremost, on behalf of IATA, just want to express our sincere gratitude to the Indonesian government and agencies for the very gracious hospitality. And it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about the needs and opportunities for SAF and how we can all improve access to financing. Very quick introduction to our organization. We are the International Air Transport Association, as the global trade association for some 330 passenger and cargo airlines around the world. We represent about 80% of global air traffic. I'm from the Asia Pacific Regional Office, based in Singapore, and these are our members in the Asia Pacific region. I think you would see a lot of familiar flags on the map. So I wanted to maybe pick up a line from the moderator earlier about the very close alignment between the commitments by countries and as well as by the industry airlines. As an airline group, we have already agreed to a net zero CO2 emissions commitment at our IATA annual general meeting in 2021. And this was then followed by an agreement by the states on a long-term aspirational goal, essentially also to reach net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 at the 41st ICAO Assembly. But I also wanted to layer on the perspective of the airline industry in terms of some of the challenges we face in reaching this net zero goal. First and foremost, we as an airline industry, we use the aircraft for a very long time because it has a very long useful lifespan. And also in developing new aircraft, it takes a very long time in order to meet all the safety and technical standards. Next, the operation of flying in moving aircraft up into the sky and from point to point, aircraft use a lot of energy. And last but not least, it is that as an airline, we are basically a user. We need to work with all the other stakeholders, be it the fuel suppliers, fuel producers, to produce the energy that we need, and also with the aircraft manufacturers, engine manufacturers, to produce the aircraft and engines that can enable our transition to net zero. So again, back to the concept of gotong royong or collaboration, we as airlines, we depend very much on this to help us reach our goal of net zero. Quite quickly, I think we already know this very well, that SAF is actually the key driver to achieve net zero CO2 emissions. Based on an IATA estimate, we estimate it to make up some 60 to 65% of the total plan for net zero by 2050. Our key problem today is that there is not enough SAF production around the world, and I think we'll be happy to hear that Pertamina looks forward to increasing the production, because as you see the amount as we track across the years from 2019, really at today we are looking at only 0.2% of SAF versus jet fuel last year. And while we expect this to actually triple this year, it is only going to hit about 0.5% of total SAF versus jet fuel output. So we really need to scale up the production of SAF. And the challenge is, how do we do this in the most effective and efficient manner? So based on our estimates, we think that minimally by 2030, this has to increase by a factor of about 50. And then to 2050, it's actually by a factor of 1,000, using the 2023 numbers that we saw earlier. And if I translate this into the number of SAF refineries, it comes up to about 7,000 SAF refineries around the world. In Asia Pacific, if I can throw a spotlight, it's that around the world, airlines have already committed to buying SAF. We have actually committed to taking out every drop of SAF that is being produced. And I think the good news is that this is not concentrated in North America or Europe as we might imagine, but Asia Pacific airlines actually make up a very healthy 20% share of these agreements. And then in terms of the production, I think this is where further discussion is needed. We saw about 250,000 tons of SAF last year. It looks like it's quite a substantial amount, but if you think of it in terms of the plant in Singapore, which has a capacity of 1 million, 250,000 is only 25% of that single plant's capacity. So I think there is a lot of space to ramp up supply of SAF and production in the region. The good news is that we track some 30 SAF projects already by 2030, and of course, Pertamina is one of them that we look forward to. So quite quickly, in terms of trying to resolve this demand and supply issue, I think we also depend a lot on policy. Why do we say so? It's because I think the suppliers, in wanting to invest, because it's a long-term investment, they look for airlines to make very long-term offtake agreements of 10, 15 years. In order for both sides to really make that commitment, policy is the only one that can give us that long-term stability of its predictability and consistency. And that's why we think that policy is very important to attract the capital required to expand SAF supply. And I think quite importantly for Asia Pacific region, air transport, especially domestic air transport, is a form of public transport. So there is a need to actually reduce the disincentive to produce SAF compared to other renewable fuels. And of course, by doing so, we would then reduce the cost gap between sustainable aviation fuel and conventional jet fuel. And I think at IATA, we think that for Asia Pacific, this can really be facilitated by the government in terms of technology, collaboration, and transfer. So this is a map of the policy developments in the region. I think some have already been mentioned. We are actually quite proud to say that for Indonesia, it is actually the first country in the region with a policy on SAF. I think it started in 2015, so very excited to hear how the new SAF roadmap will look like at its announcement tomorrow. But many of the civil aviation authorities and governments in the room today have already introduced or are thinking of introducing some form of SAF roadmap. So I think this is very encouraging, but there is a need to consider how each of these plans work best for your own country, but also in coordination with countries in the region and beyond. In terms of IATA's support, we actually developed a set of 5 net zero CO2 roadmaps to actually paint a picture of how the industry, in collaboration with other stakeholders, can make the journey towards 2050. There are a set of 5 different roadmaps, so they cover aircraft technology, energy infrastructure, including hydrogen and electric, and of course SAF, operational improvements, and also 2 enablers that are on finance, which is the topic for today, and also on policy. We will be launching a very new version of these finance and policy roadmaps sometime next week. So please, if you're interested, the link is below. Please refer to our roadmaps. I just wanted to maybe conclude today's discussion a bit with a focus on the need for public funding and use other industries to then look back at what the aviation industry can do. So these are all things that we are familiar with today because they have become a mass market, if you can put it. But in the past, actually all these required a lot of support on the R&D. So we have internet, we have the GPS systems, we have the Human Genome Project, and semiconductors. So it's interesting to note that actually, for example, in the semiconductor industry, back in the 1950s to the 1970s, a lot of the R&D research depended on the support of the US government. I think up to 90% was funded by public money. And that's where I think similarly, the outlook for SAF is healthy in terms of the number of jobs that it can create. Based on our estimates globally, we are looking at some 14 million jobs that will be created through this industry. I think other estimates by the EU and the UK, they have done some estimates on their own. More importantly, it's that I think for the Asia Pacific region, in addition to economic growth, job creation, it's also the concept of energy resilience and security. And also many of the countries here are agricultural. It can help with the recultivation of degraded land. So I think these are important concepts for the region to consider. I think just casting a very quick look on what we see in terms of the public support mechanisms for advanced biofuels. This includes SAF, but also renewable fuels. I think just by the size of the bubbles, you can see how it's very much concentrated in the US, the EU, and we do need to see a lot more support in the region on R&D for SAF. Why is this important? It's because R&D for SAF, for example, is very high risk because it's in the early stages, and that's why public support is important. More importantly, it's that for SAF, I think every country is looking at a feedstock or a pathway that best meets their needs. So again, funding becomes even more essential because it's not a one-size-fits-all. You need to have everyone looking at different options. And also, I know that there are studies out there that have considered what the feedstocks are for each of the countries, but they also do not take into account the collection process, what's the supply chain like. So that's also something that I think governments in the region must consider. I'm just going to conclude with this last slide with some points for discussion. First, the importance of public funding, especially for early stage technologies. And we do see it being very much concentrated in the North America and Europe regions. So there's a need to focus on that here in the region in Asia Pacific, and especially for emerging markets, which are looking at different feedstocks. I think it's even more important, this regional diversification. And last but not least, it's that with the very wide spectrum of countries, we do need to look at a global self-accounting network that can help us unlock some of these geographical barriers. Thank you.
Can we go around, please? Thank you. Thank you, Kelvin, for the, again, comprehensive explanation on the industry perspective from IATA in terms of SAF development. A couple of things I highlight there, of course, I think, again, policy is very important for this industry to scale up. And also regarding the supply, even though right now there is a lack of supply and we need to scale up pretty quickly, right? But there are pretty good news, for example, regarding the SAF event in Singapore, and probably Pak Taufik will also explain more from Pertamina. One thing, if I may add, just quick question, is regarding the public funding, right? I think one thing that we should also acknowledge, if I may, right, in the Southeast Asia region, or rather Global South, where we expect to see most of the aviation growth, public funding is not as flexible as to markets, developed markets such as the US, the EU, right? However, as you rightly mentioned, these Global South countries do have the feedstock that could be used to energize the SAF in the Global North, right? So from your perspective, just as a quick one, how could we overcome that gap, yeah, where, again, countries, let's say, in the Global South, such as Indonesia, we don't necessarily have that huge fiscal room to have that public funding, either for research or for generously incentivized, right? But of course, we do have those stocks that we can use it for the global market, right? And also for our own, and also as well as the research and development. Over to you, Kelvin.
Yes, I think one of the things that we always discuss is the need to bring in different government agencies to discuss this topic together, because while this is a challenge for the transport industry, it is also a potential for economic development in terms of the energy sector. So I think that's where this concept is important. And also in other forums, there was discussion about how to tap on some of the developmental banks, for example, the ADB for the region. And I think we realized that maybe as a transport industry, we don't make the need loud enough to actually gain priority in making some of these projects be taken up by some of these multilateral banks and support, say, from the World Bank. So I think it's really working together to emphasize the need and to tap on some of these projects financing that are already available out there. That's very important for this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin. I believe later Eric could also speak more on that, hopefully. But without further ado, I'd like to go to the next panelist, Pak Taufik. Would like to definitely get your perspective as a SAF producer. What is the plan for Pertamina as a state-owned company to scale up SAF production, and what are the challenges, if I may, opportunities on that end? Pak Taufik, I give the stage to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thanks for this opportunity for us to share what actually Pertamina currently have strategized to respond the requirement of the SAF for the air aviation, and also the future the strategy of our Pertamina to fulfill the requirement in the future. I think this is the baseline of why we need to develop the biofuel, including the SAF, in our group, Pertamina, because of we have the group aspiration of 2060 for net zero emission. One of them, if in the scope 3, is developing the biofuel. So I mean that's the basis actually. And what our scenario to develop the SAF development? We have 3 scenarios, because the first, if there's no mandate and also no palm oil required, so we have actually developed and put up and running in our refinery in Cilacap for co-processing SAF and also the HPO, which has capacity 9,000 barrel oil per day in Cilacap. But yes, currently our feedstock is RBDP KO, or refined bleach deodorized palm kernel oil. The reason why, because we have plenty of the feedstock in this country as the given. And currently we also developing for used cooking oil as one of the other alternative feedstock, such that is more acceptable to the market, of course. That this one we currently doing, and hopefully in the first half year next year, we will have the first production for this used cooking oil base. And parallel, we developing for the future aspiration for the country that 2027 Indonesia will be mandated for 1% SAF from the HEVA technology. Of course, we are developing for green refinery with the capacity double up from this current capacity, which is 6,000 barrel per day for HPO, and also double up for parallel for SAF. And if, of course, if the third scenario for palm oil okay and also mandated, so we will proposing the SAF for Southeast Asia region because the capacity will be increased. This is the current development of our SAF co-processing. So Pak Rifa earlier mentioned that we have used in our commercial flight in Garuda last year for SAF 2.4% with co-processing. Currently our plant has capacity 9,000 barrel per day, means that 347 million liters per year. And with conversion, this plant also has switchability to use the HPO, renewable diesel 100% with capacity 160 million liters per year. And what are in pipeline of the project as an alternative for using waste-based feedstock, UCO and POME. So we're developing the phase 2 Cilacap project, which will be on stream on 2027. So it's just right when the mandated requirement from government will be up and running, which has capacity to 38 million liter per year. And further development, we will replicate the process for other refinery in Pelaju and Dumai as well as Balikpapan. So they will increasing capacity. For example, in Balikpapan we will have 1,300 million liters per year. The roadmap for policies and mandated that we align with what our government put a roadmap, SAF roadmap especially, first for supply strategy, demand strategy, and also enabler. So we have in 3 stages developing in pilot stage. 2025, 2027 will be incubation stage, and also a full scale will be 2040. Of course, with current capacity can producing the SAF 2.4% with co-processing method in refinery Cilacap, so we're producing 347 million liters per year, which means that will be sufficient to cover the, for example, the Denpasar international flight, because from the existing capacity, we only need 80% for requirement in Denpasar as well as the Cengkareng. So the chart in right bottom, so we'll our response to the national demand up to 2040, which is 12.5% SAF capacity. And this is the estimation for SAF demand fulfillment throughout Indonesia. We have voluntary period 2025 to 2026, which will be fulfilled with current plan, and also the mandatory period from 2027 onward. We will respond to our strategy in developing the Cilacap first, and then Pelaju, Dumai, and then Balikpapan. This is a sample of how we're developing, and of course, as the speaker earlier mentioned, that how to financing this project like green refinery for example the SAF, because in the other hand the SAF price is almost 2 up to 2 to 3 times above the conventional conventional after, and we also need the investment of this plan. So of course the key investment highlight, we utilizing Indonesian abundance bio-based feedstock, yeah, and Pertamina in this case is KPI will experience in refinery business, and we prove in Cilacap first project, and also will increase the SAF and bio-naphtha product, and also to fulfill and help in net zero emission in the future. And of course, the regulatory framework, for example, the security of feedstock of used cooking oil at this moment, we need from the government also like a domestic market obligation for first priority fulfillment, the mandated in this country. That's something that we also need to work out, and how we propose to the partner for joint venturing with our business to support producing the SAF in the future in more capacity for the industry. This is the just figure. Pertamina partners and also lender build a joint venture, and this is the indicative project term for the first Green Ref phase 2 in Cilacap. I think that's my presentation. I hope that can figure out how we respond to this requirement, SAF, and also the project currently in our pipeline that of course need collaboration with other parties. Thank you.
Again, terima kasih. Thank you very much, Pak Taufik, for giving the overview of Pertamina's roadmap to answer the SAF demand not only for Indonesia, for the region. Before I continue to Scott, which my question here would have relevance to Scott as well. As I see here, most of the Pertamina refining technology is going to be HEFA, right? And of course, I understand because we are endowed with the wealth of the feedstock, which is CPO as derivative. I've been reading also another publication by Boeing, which they also indicated that we also have beyond the HEFA CPO feedstock, we also endowed with other feedstock, just biomass, right, which also requires different technology. Just want to ask you a quick question on your thoughts from Pertamina. What are your thoughts in terms of the different technologies available, on how do you take that into account on your roadmap to supply the SAF refinery for Indonesia and for the region? Right now you have HEFA, but is there any other technologies that you have in the pipeline now in terms of the SAF? I think that's just a quick question on that one.
Thank you. Of course, the acquiring technology and also partnership with the latest technology available in the industry is welcome, but at this moment, what the generation is HEFA technology is ongoing, and also we still cooperating how to more exploring the using of POME from palm oil as well to be part of the multiple feedstock that we developing in the next SAF plan in the future, and also the research by other party at this moment ongoing on Pongamia development, Pongamia plantation. So that's something that we engage also with the provider to make sure the security of feedstock supply is available, and also with the more economically viable technology, of course, because that's to help the off-taker in getting the more economic SAF in the future. So basically that we're exploring the more technology available in the industry as part of the HEFA, the next generation of SAF processing in the future.
Thank you very much, Pak Taufik, on the Indonesian perspective. Now, as Pak Taufik has explained Pertamina's roadmap and also the feedstock, right? Now, I'd like to continue our discussion to our next panelist, Mr. Scott Chern from FAA Ascent Center of Excellence, which will delve more deeper on the different technology pathways and also the feedstock and economical implication to that on the SAF development in the region from his research. So without further ado, Mr. Scott, I give you the stage.
Thank you for the introduction, and I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate here today. So I'd like to start off by looking at the value chain that will need to be established, and we've talked about it today, for SAF production to be brought up to scale and widespread adoption. So we need to have feedstock production. We need to aggregate the feedstock into economic scale for a conversion facility. We then need to distribute the sustainable aviation fuel out to airports and airplanes. To do this, we need to have the cooperation across agriculture, the industrial sector. We need to have investment. We need to have government support. And of course, the community has to accept sustainable aviation fuel. I heard mention today of research needs. We think that there's ample research opportunities. This is a nascent industry. Research opportunities to look at SAF resource or feedstock assessments, their supply, their availability, the development of new conversion technologies, and also process assessment tools that will allow us to monitor these new processes. We also need to integrate SAF into our existing petroleum infrastructure and end use, and that's already underway, but we think there's still more opportunity in that area. Pulling it all together, we need to conduct life cycle assessment of these systems to make sure that we're achieving the emission reduction and the reduced carbon intensity that is the purpose of sustainable aviation fuel. So this diagram shows a number of feedstocks, bioresources on the left-hand side that can find a pathway, and we've talked about pathways to SAF production through a number of unit operations to produce SAF, shown there on the right-hand side of the diagram. Basically, these feedstocks shown in blue are those that are currently available: sugarcane, cassava, corn, eucalyptus and other wood products, residues from something like rice production, and then oil palm. We also see at the bottom urban solid waste and waste fat, oil, and greases. So UCO is part of this block. These feedstocks contribute building blocks: sugars, starches, lignocellulosic fiber, and oil or lipids that then can be converted through these intermediate pathways to produce SAF. Also, in addition to the blue are the green or the orange blocks, which are feedstocks that are under development. Pongamia was mentioned a minute ago. There are several others that are being worked on right now. And I think we need to always have that forward-looking 20-year out, how do we get things into development? So the different sustainable aviation fuels shown on the right, those in green have already been approved through the ASTM process and are listed as annexes in ASTM D7566. Excuse me. The two there in yellow are under review, so there are more pathways being developed all the time. So although HEFA is the current front runner, there are several others that are either approved or in process. I'll skip this one for the sake of time. We've talked about CORSIA, the carbon offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation. The CORSIA default LCA values for the feedstocks that have been approved are shown here. Different conversion technologies are listed on the left. The different feedstocks are listed next to them, and they fall into classes that include residues, such as agricultural residues, wastes, main products, such as sugarcane, co-products, such as molasses, and then byproducts. And so these different classifications are used to apportion the emissions accordingly. So there are different LCA core values are shown here. On the far right is the standard petroleum jet fuel value of 90 grams CO2 per megajoule of fuel. Note that these do not include independent land use change, which is important. That has to yet be added on. So to support SAF development in the U.S., the government issued a SAF Grand Challenge, which is a roadmap that there was a whole of government approach. It included the Department of Energy, Department of Transportation with the Federal Aviation Administration, Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Agriculture, and also the Internal Revenue Service, because tax breaks are included as part of, you'll see, ongoing legislation. It has a goal of 3 billion gallons per year by 2030 and 35 billion gallons per year by 2050. In this case, SAF is defined as achieving a 50% reduction in life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, which is somewhat different from some of the others. The Inflation Reduction Act was passed in 2022. This offers tax credits to SAF tax credit in the years 2023, 2024. Again, achieving a 50% life cycle greenhouse gas reduction. It offers $1.25 $1.25 per gallon incentive for producers. Following on in 2025 and 2027 is the Clean Fuels production credit. This expands beyond SAF to other renewable fuels. This is being administered by the Internal Revenue Service through the Department of Treasury. There's also the FAST grant program. FAST stands for Fueling Aviation's Sustainable Transition. This is a $300 million competitive grant program with roughly $245 million targeted to SAF projects that enable production, transport, blending, and storage of SAF, and another $46 million to develop or apply low-emission aviation technologies. This could include electric planes. So this is being administered by the FAA. SAF procurement has increased in the U.S. Santi showed some data earlier, but we see that procurements are increasing, roughly 15 million gallons per year in 2022, 26 in 2023, and through the first part of 2024, we're already at 60 million gallons. So the incentive program and the whole of government approach to supporting SAF, not only production but utilization, is having some effect, and it's a good effect. So I think the take home here is that every country and region has a unique set of challenges and opportunities. They need to be carefully evaluated to build a viable SAF supply chain. So it's not one-off, one size fits all. Each region has to have the technical expertise, access to funding, appropriate infrastructure, biofuel policy, economic incentives, suitable lands and crops, and then the sustainability monitoring that make sure that we're producing sustainable aviation fuel and not just alternative aviation fuel. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott, for the explanation on the different pathways available for staff based on the different feedstock, as well as the potential additional new technologies that could be adopted for SAF production, right? As well as giving us a pretty short yet on the point overview of the US Grand Challenge, which, if I may, provides a different flavor from the EU policy, which in this case it's more about supplying from the, incentivizing from the supply side rather than demand side when I see here, because I see here there's no mandates per se in the US, but it's more about incentivizing the market. How could it's more feasible, or sorry, it's more viable to use SAF and produce SAF, right, versus the other alternative. I think one follow-up question, if I may ask here. Again, I think from the global south perspective, as I mentioned, a lot of the problem in terms of the not only scaling up SAF, but new R&Ds for SAF is about public funding, right? For the US Grand Challenge, I know that most of it is dedicated for the US, right? But what are the possibilities to also distribute those funds, for example, the FAST grants, to other nations that want to scale up the technology in producing SAF using other pathways? For example, I think Pak Taufik here mentioned the plant Patangalia. What was the plant that you mentioned? Patangalia, the plant? Ponamia, sorry. Ponamia, for example, right? So I just want to understand from your perspective, is that grant, for example, transferable to other countries? And probably then we can share the research, for example, right? Yeah, my question is that you mentioned there's a grant there from the US SAF Grand Challenge. Is that grant applicable for non-US countries in this sense?
I think that it would be limited to US companies.
US companies.
Yeah. So it could be a company that has a presence in the US. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, but if you're, for example, an Indonesian company, I think it would be difficult for them to apply and be successful. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you very much. So I think we're now in the last leg of discussion. So as I mentioned to you, I think we have a very strong discussion on the demand supply side. Now we're going to touch one of the most important but less discussed before on SAF scale-up, which is the financing. On this case, I will present Mr. Eric to explain his perspective from IRENA on what are possible mechanisms, right, from the challenges, opportunities that previous speaker has provided to allocate financing for SAF projects, not only in Asia, the region, but also globally. Mr. Eric, I give you the stage to present your perspective.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. And it's also an honor to be sharing the stage with such a panel. As mentioned, I come from the International Renewable Energy Agency. And I would like to give you a bit of context on what IRENA does and what is our stand on SAF and the instruments that are available out there for our member countries. So I promise to be quick and clear. Bear with me. I give you a little walk through IRENA's history. So IRENA was established in 2011. Our mandate is to support our countries worldwide in the transition, in the energy transition toward a sustainable future. Today we count with us 170 members, including 169 countries, plus the European Union. During the first decade, IRENA dedicated most of its resources to do advocacy towards renewables, convincing the world that renewables were good and that renewables were not only good for the environment, but also good for business, which is key. And when it comes to SAF as well, it's key to understand that SAF has to be good for business if we want to bring it forward. And we dedicated, as I said, a decade to do that. And in 2020, our current Director General believed that the world is convinced. We know that renewables is good, so we need to move forward and start implementing. And the Project Facilitation Support Division was created with the mandate to mobilize resources to implement those projects on the ground. We identified 5 pillars, as you can see here, that include infrastructure, policy, that we talk about here a lot, supply chain, international collaboration, and finance. And I truly believe that these 5 pillars apply equally to SAF. We need to tackle them all in order to make sure that we move sustainable aviation fuels forward. In the Project Facilitation Support Division, we created 2 initiatives. Excuse me. Yes. These 2 initiatives, one is called the Energy Transition Accelerator Financing Platform, and the other one is called the Energy Transition, Climate Investment Platform. And I will talk about it, how they work and how they facilitate finance towards renewable energy projects and also SAF included. Why SAF? We know that is part of those, we call it hard-to-abate sectors, one of the 5, where we can see shipping is there, iron and steel is there, heavy-duty transportation is there, aviation is there. And even though we've heard today that aviation contributes 2.5% to greenhouse gas emissions, before we got on stage, I was talking with Santiago actually, and we said, yeah, it's only 2.5%. Maybe it's not on the priority list at the very, very top, but every other technology that produces greenhouse gas emissions is going to decrease those emissions very rapid. And if we don't tackle aviation, that 2.5% is going to continue increasing, becoming top of the list. So we don't want to be late, we want to do it now. So as IRENA, now, as you can see, we are putting out there a lot of resources to inform the world now that SAF is the way to go, because it's good for the environment and it's going to become good for business as well. So we need to pay special attention to that aspect. So the 2 platforms, the Climate Investment Platform and the Energy Transition Accelerator Financing Platform, were created to support member countries to have tools in order to submit project proposals and for IRENA to do the match with financial institutions that are out there looking for those projects. Both platforms work in a similar way. They are focused on different kinds of projects, while the Climate Investment Platform is looking for projects that are perhaps a little earlier in their development stage. The ETAF is looking for projects that are ready to receive finance. And lately we have been in a lot of discussions with ICAO, because this is something that they are also looking into, to utilize these platforms for SAF projects as well. So even though until today there hasn't been submissions of SAP projects to the platforms, we're adapting the tools to provide technical assistance as well as matchmaking solutions to SAP projects. It is important to manage expectations. This takes time. So it's not going to be a solution that is going to be implemented in terms of weeks or months. To give you a bit of numbers, through the Climate Investment Platform that has been running since 2019, we have received more than 400 applications. We have supporting 89 of those that were up to the level required by the financial institutions. And we have financially closed or mobilized finance to 5 projects during 5 years. So in average, we can say that it takes around 1 year time from project submission in order to close a deal for a project. So it takes time, and we need to be aware of that. The ETAF is a bit of a different story. So as I said, it is an accelerator. So we are focalizing all projects that are developed, all feasibility studies are ready, the projects are ready to receive the financing support through the ETAF. So we close projects that are in terms of months, but are projects that are very, very, very mature in the supply chain. Here, you can scan this if you want more information on the platforms. They will take you to a website where we have webinars, and they will walk you step by step on how to submit projects through the different platforms available. In terms of Southeast Asia, we have done studies, and we talk about it here, that the potential is enormous. And specifically in terms of Indonesia, Indonesia is top when it comes to the potential of feedstock in the region. So we know that this is an area that we need to focus on in terms of geography, and also an area that we need to focus on in terms of technology. So currently, as ARENA, we're working on a report dedicated for this area that is going to come at the end of 2024. And it's going to show a bit on the global perspectives on SAF developed in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for introducing this topic on financing renewables and ARENA's role. I'm really happy to see that ARENA already has available financing tools mechanism that could be, if I may, adopted for SAF. But although I took note that it's not as easy as a goal, if I may, it takes a very rigorous due diligence from ARENA, but if it passes through, it's very well awarded, right? Now, I think I typically have follow-up questions, right, for the speakers, but for you specifically, because it's a very new topic for us, all of it, I would like to give the stage for other speakers if there are any questions that you like to ask to other speakers, as well as the distinguished audience. If there are any specific questions you'd like to ask to any of us, to the speakers on this stage. So I think, first of all, from the speakers, is there any thoughts or addition you'd like to ask to the other speakers on stage? I give it to anyone.
If I may, I would like to ask Eric. I think it would be quite interesting because in this platform you are looking at renewable energies, so you are not only looking at sustainable aviation fuel, this is just one of the many. But if you have exposed already to such projects, what would be the difference between, for example, solar project or versus sustainable aviation fuel? Which are the, let's say, the opportunities or the specific difficulties that you see for financing these kind of projects?
Thank you for the question. Something that caught my attention actually to answer that when Mr. Taufik, you were talking about the support that is required from the government for these projects. When it comes to, let's say, solar or wind, these are technologies that are very, very popular. So private sector is willing to go into it without, let's say, much thought. Of course, due diligence needs to be in place, but not so much. When it comes to SAF, we really want to see the involvement of the government. And the other aspect, it has to be, we call it, the developer has to have skin in the game. So when you said that your project is being 50% financed locally and is looking for the other 50% finance abroad, that's a very good ratio because you are showing that you believe in what you are doing. And this is what financial institutions out there want to see, especially private sector. So we believe that, number one, the sponsor, the developer itself has to believe strongly in their project and the government has to have a role to play there. And then we need to bring private sector in because without private sector it's very, very hard. But private sector wants to see that the public sector truly believes in what they are putting out there. Because even though it is not, we cannot say, okay, it's a very new technology, but we can say this is a very new approach to a very well-established sector that is going to take time. So government involvement and the belief and also the support is key, and private sector involvement as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Santi and Eric, for the question and answers. I think it's very interesting that how you put it, right? SAF is not a new technology. It's like if I may, a familiar tool in the shed that you're now applying for a different usage, right? Because the technology is, in a sense, it's biofuel that we've seen a lot. I think Indonesia, as we all know, we have a very strong development headed by Taufik in terms of the biodiesel mandates, right? But this is more about how we can use the same tool in the shed to solve another problem, which is in this case aviation. And point taken on the government involvement is also very important to ensure confidence in the private sector of these investments, right? I'd like to give another chance from the speaker. If there are any additional questions, I'd like to ask towards one of you.
Yeah, interesting what Scott presenting in many other opportunity to develop the SAF, right? So it's probably a more, but that's technology should be fit to the what available in the country, right? So I mean that we also look forward what other alternative that we can develop in this region. From your explanation, there's many feedstock possibility that probably we can explore more in providing the more flexibility in the feedstock. Probably would like to have your more explanation how we access to that your side sources in the future. We can follow up.
So yeah, if I understand, I think if you look at how countries are planning, for example, the HEFA using UCO is, of course, the baseline that everybody is working with now. Indonesia also has a sugar industry. So there could be an alcohol-to-jet pathway that might come on later. I think the other low-hanging fruit, which is a tough one, is the municipal solid waste or solid waste pathway, right? Waste, I come from a state composed of 7 islands, not 17,000, but we also have solid waste problems. And how do we dispose and manage and protect the environment? So if we can work toward incorporating something like solid waste into SAF production, we can as we would say, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? We can solve 2 problems. So, but there's much work to be done in terms of solving the problems associated with MSW gasification, if you're going to use a Fischer-Tropsch. So maybe we would start off with some of the friendlier feedstocks, some of the agricultural residues. Wood is probably the best one, wood residue. So I think it's going to be a staged approach, and demonstration projects, which aren't necessarily full scale to begin with, have to be taken on first so that we can establish a certain degree of comfort operating these systems so that we can, build reliability and dependability into our production.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Taufik and Pak on the question and Pak Scott on this answer. So point taken, Pak, on the low-hanging fruit in Indonesia, one of it is municipal waste, and definitely it's as you mentioned, it's killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? It's solving the municipal waste problem, also using it into something more useful. I think in Indonesia we also have an example project, which is the municipal-based electric generation, but it's still in pilot, but that's also something that we also have some experience on. Now, thank you very much again, distinguished panelists, for the overview and also the Q&A. Now I'd like to give the time for the audience, if there are any questions from the audience to the panelists at this stage. So, any questions from the audience?
I'll be first. David Peterson from CASA in Australia. Thank you for very interesting presentations on SAFs, which is not an area that I work in particularly, but it was great to get an understanding of where this very important segment of the solution is heading. I guess my question for, I'm not sure who it's directed to, but perhaps a couple of you, is that we're talking about slowly introducing a sustainable aviation fuel component into the overall fuel blend for the uptake of jet fuel in international aviation. And we're talking about potentially going from 1% to 2% to 5%. That would be hard enough if the target that we were blending into was static. But if we look at the growth in air transportation in the last 20 or 25 years and the very significant uplift, essentially we're chasing an increasing share of an increasing overall number. So I'm just curious as to how does the potential growth projection for civil aviation into the future factor into the the SAF equation in terms of what we might need going forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. So I believe this kind of addresses every one of us, probably except for Eric, about financing, but feel free to chime in. If I try to recap the question, is that in a way it's a moving target. That's what I'm getting here, because the civil aviation growth, fuel growth is also growing. Meanwhile, we have a set target on the percentage of that. How does that factor in terms of the overall demand for SAF, and whether that has been factored in the beginning to begin with, right? So probably I'll give each panelist to just give a short response to that, starting from Santi. You want to chime in, or Kelvin?
So maybe just as a response from the airline's perspective, it's that I think while we await production of SAF and the supply in the region, especially at airlines, we have already made commitments and also direct investments. Actually, many of the member airlines in the room here today have made additional voluntary commitments above and the industry commitment, as well as direct investments into producing SAF. And I think I'll let the other panelists comment on SAF itself, but we must not forget the role of carbon offsets in making sure that we still make significant progress to net zero. So it's not like a static movement, but it's dynamic. And that's something that while we focus a lot on SAF, we do have CORSIA that guides us there in the short to medium term.
Yeah, indeed, if I may, I think also we are very conscious of the role that aviation plays in the economy. And obviously the purpose of all these initiatives here is to decouple the growth of aviation from the growth of emissions. And as Kevin mentioned, so CORSIA, this global scheme for offsetting, is ensuring that we are, in this case, not net zero, but that we are neutral. So that we stay at 2019, 85% of the 2019 levels, considering the growth factor of the sector. So that is one of the measures. Obviously, all additional initiatives will reduce and I think this is maybe also a point of reflection for the authorities. There is a significant improvement in the efficiency of the operations. And I think this is obviously continuing work, but for airlines, this will give them the necessary margin to assume additional commitments. I mean, improving 2% on the emissions in improving, for example, the efficiency of the airspace, or up to 5% in terms of operations and operational efficiency, that will give this 5 or 2% margin to address sustainable aviation fuels with less impact on their, basically on their counts. And also minimizing the transfer of this cost of the sustainable aviation fuels on the passenger tickets. That's also something that is obviously one of the elements that we are monitoring as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other answer from the panelists like to chime in?
I echo Santi. Technology improvements in terms of aircraft are also going to contribute. The way aircraft are operated, both in the air and on the ground. And, you know, really in your question, this is true not only in sustainable aviation fuel, but electricity. I mean, our whole energy consumption, we face this same challenge. So I think we have to recognize it as a challenge, but we can't put our head in the hole in the ground and say, you know, we can't do anything. So we need to work on it. There's work to be done.
Please? No, just want to, because you read my mind. The consumption of electricity is also a moving target, especially now that the global south is industrializing, right? So we need more and more electricity. So it's a very similar situation, but it's also, we touch we touched it here. We said, for number one is a transition. So we need to include a bit more and more of it as we move forward. The cost of this technology is going to decrease. 20 years ago, solar was not an option. Now solar is the option to go. So we're positive that maybe 10 years or 20 years from now, SAF will be the most obvious option to invest into. And then also, investment helps a lot into the, let's say, the transition, the creation of jobs. Today, where we're standing, for $1 million that you invest in renewables versus fossil fuels, you create 3 times more the number of jobs in renewables versus fossil fuels. So we need to look into those benefits into SAF as well in order to say, okay, even though the target is moving, we also, technology-wise, investment-wise, economics of scale-wise, we're moving faster to catch up with it.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists, for the answers. I give back to the audience if there's additional questions, please.
Yes, good morning. Christian Duin from Global Sky Singapore. I wonder why there is such a difference of price between the fuel and the SAF. You're talking about 2 to 5 times. What are the major factors for that, and how do you see how it could be controlled? Because what is maybe scaring is that if people producing SAF are facing such a high demand, there is a risk also for higher margin in the future.
Thank you very much, Christian, for the question. So if I just recap, right, the question is what's driving the different price of SAF, right? And I believe, again, I think this is something that all panelists could also chime in. Probably would like to start, Santi or Patofik?
Yes, probably. That's from presenter earlier, that 3 times the price of the SAF. The first, probably the market price of SAF globally is high, right? Like many market assessment state that because of the pricing for the SAF is at this moment is probably the market availability of the SAF, right? And the second one from my experience is the feedstock price. The feedstock price from feedstock price in this country, CPO, we don't have any allocation. How much allocation of feedstock for the SAF and how much allocation for the food? That's CPO based. And I hope that UCO, used cooking oil, also a government can provide like a domestic market obligation such that we can have the security of supply of feedstock with the economically viable price such that the SAF also can be, end product can be competitive. That's my point of view. The first, availability of the SAF producing globally, and the security of feedstock. That's why the more technology, more alternative of feedstock will be help in having the SAF is more affordable for the airlines.
Thank you. Mr. Scott?
I mean, if you look at HEFA now, I think the conversion technology unit operations for HEFA are already present in refineries around the world, right? Hydrotreating, hydrocracking, these are it's nothing new. So the cost of the conversion process is well understood, maybe scale dependent a little bit, but often it's happening at existing refineries. So there's a lot of utilities and benefits that can be gained by co-locating with existing infrastructure. It really is feedstock. And so that we're going to have to crack that nut. Yeah.
Santi, like chime in as well?
Yeah, I think if you compare, for example, co-production, where the facility is already there, obviously there is certain investment to be made, but the capex is very small versus, for example, power to liquid, where everything has to build from scratch, access into renewable energy or renewable electricity for the part of the process, that is a significant cost. And also, most of the production plants are first of their kind, and therefore, until the process, the industrial process is fine-tuned, obviously that is not the most efficient process in place. So it takes time to increase the production and to maximize the production from those facilities. That also explains why we see the price going down, but starting from a high capex.
Thank you very much. Again, can we give another round of applause for the panelists here for all? So, as we reach the conclusion of the session, right? I think there's already a screen here saying we have to recap. I have to conclude the session. Allow me just to quickly recap some of the conclusion highlights of this panel, which I think very interesting for us to further ponder on and also action, especially for the policymakers here in Asia, industry players, as well as the policymakers within the region, right? So on the demand side, what I heard is about policy, because this is a new technology, it has to be demand-driven, and there could be different types of policy, but specifically you need to have a policy that provides a level playing field and also certainty of people to be using SAF, right? Not something that you apply on first year, but suddenly you reskin it later on. And I think if we go back to Indonesia, I hope we have high hopes for Indonesia with the roadmap that we'll be launching tomorrow, with also the action plan that we have laid it out there. That this could be for Indonesia itself, it's something that could be sustainable, right? The other aspect of demand that I capture here is also about how do we also integrate that with the region, right? Because again, I think Indonesia, with the ASEAN market, although it's not as developed as EU right now, but there's definitely, if I may, opportunities there how we can sync our development together. So there is less disruption, right, on the demand side and also the supply side for us. And I think there's something that definitely in Indonesia, at least different ministries need to coordinate together. How could we advocate for that, right? On the supply side, it's also very interesting that it's not just about business kits, but also business kits that has to be supported by policy. Again, policy, right? I got here from Pak Taufik that for Pertamina, they are confident that they are the first SAF producer in Asia, and they are confident that we are able to scale further, but of course with the support of the government. And I think just to add there as well, supply, even Indonesian government, I believe, will also like to catalyze not just from Pertamina, if I may, to also create the competition, because I think as Kelvin mentioned, IATA, the supply is still low, this demand is going to be big, so there's going to be even more players here coming in that should create the ecosystem, right? And also on the supply side, there are different technologies avenues. For Indonesia, one thing that could be low-hanging fruit beyond HIFA is about the municipal solid waste and how we could use that to even expand and provide technological breakthrough for our biofuel production, right, in the future. And last but not least, on financing, the thing about SAF is that, again, as Eric highlighted, it's an old tool in the shed that will be used for a new problem. So hopefully there is, and we're glad to hear that there are different financing tools, mechanisms that are available, be it by ARENA or be it by other multilaterals that could be used. Now it's just about how to advocate them and educate them that SAF is necessary to achieve our global global net zero targets, right? And it's not just about that, but it's also about job creation that SAF could provide and hence the economic multiplier. So again, with that conclusion, I would like to conclude this panel. Again, I would like to thank again the distinguished panelists, Mr. Santi, Mr. Kelvin, Pak Taufik, Mr. Scott, Mr. Eric. I hope that you will also enjoy Bali while your mining stay here. Bali has its own charisma, if I may. And we look forward to seeing you in other events as well, if possible, in tomorrow's ceremony as well, in the roadmap launching. So again, thank you very much. Have a wonderful head. I give back the stage to the MC.
Thank you, moderators, and thank you to all of the speakers. Now please rise. because now we will move to the next agenda. We will present you a token of appreciation. Please rise. And for that, I would like to invite Director of Airworthiness and Aircraft Operation, Ministry of Transportation of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak M. Mauludin. Well, let's give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And now, please take a picture to capture this moment. In 3, 2, 1. One more time in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Now you may return to your seat. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much to Bapak M. Mauludin. Thank you so much to our moderator, Bapak Arvinandi Ferialdi, and our distinguished speakers for your valuable insight. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to continuing this event forum with another session ahead. But before we continue to the next agenda, we will be taking a lunch break that will be served at Tanjung Benoa Hall. Please do enjoy, and we kindly ask all participants to return here at 1:20 p.m. for the next agenda. And ladies and gentlemen, for distinguished guests who wish perform their prayer or salat, you may do so in Legian 5 room. Thank you so much, and once again, enjoy your lunch.
"17,000 islands are spread across Indonesian territory, from Sabang to Merauke, from Miangas to Rote Island. Thousands of aircraft fly across the Indonesian sky each day. These unique geographical features have required Indonesia to make the development of air transport a top priority. in order to link a number of regions which are hard to reach by other modes of transportation. With 406 air routes connecting 251 airports throughout this country, DGCA Indonesia supports the National Economic Program, Indonesia-centric development, in connecting all the regions, including remote, outermost, inland, and border areas. DGCA Indonesia, with a number of achievements in the civil aviation sector, works to ensure the highest levels of safety, security, and convenience to aviation service consumers. Given regulatory function to oversee airport operators, air navigation providers, and airlines, DGCA Indonesia supervises and provides guidance to implementing operations including airspace use, aircrafts and airports, operation of air carrier and air navigation, enhancing aviation safety and security, reducing environmental impact, as well as aviation operations. Having implemented the Airbridge Subsidy program, DGCA Indonesia is now able to lower prices for hard-to-reach areas, which will likely increase the purchasing power of the citizen. The government is currently providing subsidies to passenger air carriers of pioneer routes, which has now proven to successfully decrease the price of 5 basic food needs. Complying with international civil aviation standards allows Indonesia to serve flights to all parts of the world, performing well against global competition. To achieve the image of an advanced Indonesia, for the sake of a bright future of the nation. Safe, secure, efficient, and convenient air transport. Directorate General of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Transportation, Republic of Indonesia.
Indonesia adalah negara dengan kekayaan alam yang melimpah dan memiliki keberagaman suku dan budaya yang tersebar di ribuan pulau. Namun, tidak semua daerah bisa menikmati pembangunan yang merata, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Konektivitas menjadi masalah utama yang menghambat kemajuan suatu daerah. Sementara itu, mimpi dan harapan anak-anak generasi penerus bangsa di semua daerah adalah sama. Oleh karena itulah negara hadir, melalui Direktorat Jenderal Perhubungan Udara, melakukan pembangunan bandara-bandara baru, terutama di daerah tertinggal, terdepan, terluar, dan perbatasan. Membangun konektivitas transportasi untuk memutus keterisolasian. Membangun jembatan udara dengan angkutan udara perintis kargo untuk mendukung penurunan disparitas harga barang kebutuhan pokok di daerah terpencil, tertinggal, dan daerah yang belum terlayani moda transportasi lain. Dengan dibangunnya bandara-bandara di daerah pinggiran dan terisolasi, menjadikan masyarakat dan anak-anak di sana berkesempatan untuk maju setara dengan daerah lainnya di Indonesia. Pembangunan konektivitas transportasi menjadikan bangsa Indonesia kuat dan bersatu dalam kebersamaan. Transportasi menjadi jembatan kebersamaan, menghubungkan, menyatukan, mengikat keberagaman.
Here are some urban air mobility, UAM, and advanced air mobility, AAM, activities in Indonesia. Demo flight of Ahang 216 in Bali on November 26, 2021. Indonesia Drone Expo, IDE, exhibition on August 10th to 11th, 2023. Demo flight